The alarm screamed through the hull of the survey ship like a dying animal, and Jake Morrison held onto his seat harness as the world turned sideways around him. The navigation console exploded in a shower of sparks, filling the small bridge with smoke and the smell of burning circuits. "Brace for impact!" Commander Lisa Grant shouted from the captain's chair, her knuckles wide as she gripped the manual controls. The ship had been cruising through neutral space on a routine geological survey mission when the navigation system simply died, leaving them plummeting toward an uncharted planet below. Jake watched the view screen as the planet's surface rushed up to meet them, all brown rock and purple-tinged atmosphere. He was a geological surveyor, not a soldier or a pilot, just a 32-year-old man who liked rocks and quiet work. This was supposed to be an easy assignment. The ship hit the ground at an angle, skipping like a stone across water before it plowed into the rocky terrain. Metal screamed and tore, gravity went crazy, and Jake's world became a nightmare of spinning chaos and crushing force. His harness cut into his chest, his head slammed against the headrest, and everything went white with pain. Then silence. Jake hung in his harness, upside down, his ears ringing. Blood dripped from his nose, falling upward toward the ceiling that was now the floor. Smoke filled the air, making him cough. "Commander?" he called out, his voice rough. "Lieutenant Rodriguez? Dr. Palmer?" A groan answered him from somewhere to his left. Jake unclipped his harness and dropped to what had been the ceiling, landing hard on his shoulder. He scrambled toward the sound, finding Commander Grant trapped in her chair. "My leg," she gasped, her face pale with pain. "I think it's broken." Jake looked around frantically. Dr. Palmer hung motionless in his station near the back, his neck bent at an angle that made Jake's stomach turn. No need to check for a pulse there. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was slumped over her console, unconscious but breathing. "Stay still," Jake told the commander, though she clearly wasn't going anywhere. "Let me assess the situation." He made his way through the wrecked bridge to the emergency station. The panel was cracked but functional, displaying damage reports in angry red text. Main communications offline. Life support failing. Hull breach in 3 sections. Distress beacon damaged. The good news was that the emergency systems had deployed automatically. The bad news was that they were stranded on a hostile planet with no way to call for help and a ship that was dying around them. Jake pulled the survival kit from its compartment, a sleek silver case that opened with a hiss of pressurized air. Inside, 47 items gleamed in neat rows, each one a marvel of galactic engineering. Water purification tablets that could clean 1,000 liters. Nutrient synthesizers that could create a week's worth of food from atmospheric particles. A portable shelter that assembled itself. Medical nanobots in sealed vials. Energy weapons. Scanning devices. Communication boosters. Every single thing a survivor might need. Designed by 500 years of galactic survival science. Jake stared at the kit for a long moment, then looked at the view screen that still somehow worked. The planet outside was harsh, all jagged rocks and strange twisted vegetation. The atmosphere reading showed toxic gases that would kill them in minutes without breathing equipment. The temperature was already dropping as the local sun set. He stood and walked to the blown-out section of hull, careful not to cut himself on the jagged metal. The ship had come to rest in a rocky valley surrounded by cliff faces. Purple clouds rolled overhead, and the wind howled like something alive. Near the hull breach, half buried in the dirt, Jake saw a rock. It was about the size of his fist, dark basalt by the look of it, one end slightly pointed and the other rounded smooth. He reached down and picked it up, feeling its weight in his hand. "Morrison?" Commander Grant's voice was strained. "What are you doing?" Jake turned back to her, holding the rock. "Getting what I need. The survival kit has everything we need." she said, confusion mixing with her pain. Weapons, tools, shelter. Jake looked at the rock in his hand, then at the kit with its 47 perfectly designed items. He tested the weight of the stone, felt how it balanced in his grip, noted the sharp edge where it had broken from a larger piece. "That'll do," he said quietly. "That'll do?" Lisa stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Morrison, we're stranded on a hostile alien planet. We need the kit." "We'll use some of it," Jake agreed, already moving back to her. "The medical supplies, the breathing filters, the water tabs. But this," he held up the rock, "this is my primary tool." "That's insane." Jake knelt beside her chair and started examining her leg. "My grandfather fought in the colony wars. He survived 3 crashes, 2 sieges, and a plasma fire. You know what he told me before he died?" "What?" Lisa asked, her voice tight with pain as Jake carefully probed her injury. "He said technology fails. Training fades. But a human with a rock and a plan is eternal." Jake pulled open the medical section of the survival kit and extracted the nanobot injector. "Your leg's broken but not compound. These nanobots will stabilize it." He administered the injection, and Lisa gasped as the microscopic machines went to work. "You can't seriously think that rock is better than everything in this kit." Jake was already moving, pulling out breathing filters and attaching one to Lisa's face. "The plasma torch in this kit has a 6-hour battery. After that, it's useless. This rock?" He held it up again. "Never runs out. Never needs charging. Can't malfunction." He moved to Lastruna Rodriguez next, checking her pulse and breathing. "Concussion, probably, but stable." He fitted a breathing filter over her face, too. The ship groaned around them, and somewhere deep in the hull, something exploded. Jake didn't flinch. He was already planning, his mind racing through everything that needed doing before full dark. First, get the commander and Rodriguez out of the wreck. Second, build a shelter. Third, secure a perimeter. Fourth, assess what could be salvaged. Fifth, figure out how to repair the distress beacon. He looked at the rock in his hand again, this simple piece of basalt that had been here probably millions of years before they crashed. It would be here millions of years after they left too, assuming they survived to leave. Outside, something howled in the growing darkness. It didn't sound friendly. Jake grabbed the survival kit with one hand and kept the rock in the other. "Commander, I'm going to drag you out of here. This is going to hurt. Wait." Lisa grabbed his arm. "At least tell me you have a plan." Jake looked at her, then at the rock, then at the hostile world beyond the broken hull. "Always." What he didn't say was that the plan was simple: survive the night. Everything else could wait. The howling came again, closer this time. Jake tightened his grip on the rock and got to work. The planet's first moon was rising by the time Jake dragged Lisa Grant clear of the wreckage. The purple atmosphere turned the moonlight sickly green, casting weird shadows across the rocky valley. He'd made 4 trips total. Lisa first, then Amy Rodriguez, who was still unconscious, then a survival kit, and finally an armload of metal debris from the ship. "You should use the portable shelter from the kit," Lisa said through gritted teeth. Her leg was stabilized by the nanobots, but she still couldn't walk. "It assembles automatically." Jake was already moving, using his rock to pound against a twisted piece of hull plating. The sharp strikes sent up sparks. "The shelter needs flat ground and stable atmosphere." "Look around." Lisa looked. The ground was all jagged stones and uneven surfaces. The wind was picking up, howling through the valley with increasing violence. She had to admit he had a point. "So what's your brilliant plan?" she asked. Jake didn't answer with words. Instead, he used the rock like a hammer, flattening one end of the metal debris. Then he wedged the pointed end of the stone into a seam and pried, separating two pieces of hull plating. Within 10 minutes, he had 3 large flat pieces of metal. He arranged them in a rough triangle against a boulder, creating a lean-to-shelter. The rock became his hammer again, driving pieces of broken antenna into the ground as stakes. He tied everything together with cable he pulled from the ship's wiring. "That won't hold in a real storm," Lisa observed. "Doesn't need to hold forever," Jake said, still working. "Just needs to hold tonight." He gathered smaller rocks and stacked them around the base, using his basalt stone to chip them into shapes that fit together. Lisa watched in growing amazement as the crude shelter took shape. It wasn't pretty, but it was solid. Amy groaned and opened her eyes. "What happened?" "We crashed," Lisa told her. "Morrison is building us a house with a rock." "A what?" Amy sat up slowly, wincing. She looked at Jake, who was now using the rock to scrape out a fire pit in front of the shelter. "Exactly what it sounds like," Lisa said. Jake ignored their conversation. He was gathering dry debris from the ship, stuff that would burn. He arranged it in the pit, then struck his rock against a piece of metal plating. Sparks flew. He struck again and again, aiming the sparks at a piece of torn fabric soaked in leaking hydraulic fluid. On the 5th strike, the fabric caught. Flames licked up, small at first, then growing as Jake carefully fed the fire. Soon they had a decent blaze going. "The plasma torch would have been easier," Lisa muttered. "And would have used 1 hour of its 6-hour battery," Jake countered. "This fire costs us nothing and burns as long as we feed it." He pulled out the water purification tablets from the survival kit and dropped 2 into a metal container he'd fashioned from a helmet. "See? I'm not ignoring the kit. I'm using it smart." Amy was looking around, her security training kicking in. "We're exposed here. Anything could attack from 3 sides." "4 sides," Jake corrected. "But the fire helps. Most predators don't like fire." He pulled out a scanner from the survival kit. "And this will give us early warning." He set up the scanner at the edge of their camp, pointing it outward. The small device hummed to life, its screen showing the terrain around them in heat signature mode. Lisa and Amy exchanged glances. Maybe Morrison wasn't as crazy as he seemed. Jake settled by the fire, his rock still in hand. First night on a hostile world. "Stay alert. Stay alive." "You've done this before?" Amy asked. "Not this exactly," Jake admitted. "But I grew up on frontier colonies. My family were old Earth traditionalists. We learned the hard way before we learned the easy way." "Why?" Lisa asked. "Why not just use technology from the start?" Jake looked at his rock, turning it in his hands. "Because technology fails. My grandfather taught me that. He was in the colony wars, fought on 6 different worlds. You know how many times his advanced weapons failed him?" "How many?" Amy asked. "Every single time when it mattered most," Jake said. "Environmental interference, power failures, incompatible systems. But you know what never failed? A sharpened stick. A rock. Fire. The basics." A howl split the night, long and eerie. All 3 of them froze. "That's close," Amy whispered. Jake checked the scanner. 100 meters. Big heat signature. "Moving this way." "The plasma rifle," Lisa said urgently. "Use the rifle from the kit." Jake was already moving, but he didn't reach for the rifle. Instead, he grabbed several fish-sized rocks and positioned himself between the shelter and the direction of the howl. "Stay behind me." "Morrison, don't be stupid," Lisa shouted. The creature came into view, illuminated by the firelight. It was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with 6 legs and a head that was mostly teeth. Its eyes reflected the fire like mirrors. It stopped at the edge of the light, watching them. Jake stood still, rock in hand. His heart was pounding, but his grandfather's training kept him steady. "Don't run!" Running triggers the chase instinct. "Shoot it," Amy hissed. "Not yet," Jake said quietly. "It's curious, not hunting. Look at its posture." The creature took a step forward. Jake threw one of the smaller rocks, not at the creature, but near it. The stone clattered against the ground. The creature jumped back, startled. "They're not used to prey fighting back," Jake explained, never taking his eyes off the beast. "Most things run." He banged two rocks together, creating a sharp cracking sound. The creature's ears flattened. It took another step back. "Noise and fire," Jake continued, making himself as large as possible. Two things predators respect across every world. He threw another rock, this time closer to the creature. It landed right in front of the beast's face. The creature snarled, but backed up further. "One more should do it," Jake muttered. He selected his best throwing stone and let it fly. It struck the creature on the shoulder, not hard enough to really hurt it, but enough to make a statement. The creature turned and looked back into the darkness. Jake stood there for another full minute, listening. When he was sure it was gone, he let out a long breath. "That was insane," Lisa said. "That was smart," Amy corrected. "If you'd used a plasma rifle, the energy discharge might have attracted more of them. Territorial predators respond to energy weapons like they're being challenged." Jake nodded. Someone paid attention in xenobiology class. He returned to the fire and added more fuel. "The creature will tell others about us. They'll avoid the camp now." "How can you be sure?" Lisa asked. "I can't," Jake admitted. "But predators don't waste energy on difficult prey when easier food exists. We made ourselves difficult." High above them, hidden in the planet's upper atmosphere, a ship watched. The Zentari scout vessel had been monitoring the crash site since the human ship went down. Inside, 3 researchers observed the humans with growing fascination. The human rejected the standard survival protocols, Velcro said, his translation device rendering his clicks and whistles into standard galactic speech. Instead, he chose a primitive tool. Perhaps his cognitive functions were damaged in the crash? Suggested another researcher. "Unlikely," Velcro replied. "His actions are too deliberate, too calculated. He's making choices, not mistakes." But why reject superior technology? Velcro studied the human sitting by his fire, rock still in hand. "I don't know, but I intend to find out. Continue monitoring. Record everything." Back at the camp, Jake took first watch. He sat by the fire, his basalt rock resting in his lap, and watched the darkness beyond the light. Lisa and Amy slept fitfully, their bodies healing. Jake didn't sleep. He was already planning for tomorrow. They needed to repair the distress beacon. That meant building a signal tower. That meant using his rock for 100 different tasks. He looked at the simple stone in his hands and smiled. His grandfather would be proud. The night was long, but they would survive it. They would survive all of it. Because a human with a rock and a plan was eternal. Morning came with purple light and howling winds. Jake had stayed awake all night, keeping watch and feeding the fire. Lisa and Amy woke to find him already working, using his rock to pound metal debris into flat sheets. "What are you doing now?" Lisa asked, accepting the water container Jake handed her. The purification tablets had done their job overnight. "Building a signal tower," Jake said, not stopping his work. "The distress beacon from the kit has limited range. The planet's magnetic field is interfering. We need height." Amy looked around the valley. "How much height?" Jake pointed to a ridge about 200 meters away. "Up there, above the interference layer." The molecular bonder in the kit could assemble a proper tower in an hour, Lisa said. Standard prefab design, stable, safe. Jake shook his head. The bonder needs rare earth elements. Check the kit inventory. We have enough bonding material for maybe 3 meters of structure. Not enough. Lisa checked the kit's display. He was right. The crash had ruptured several containers, and the bonding gel had leaked out. So you're going to build a tower with rocks and scrap metal? Amy asked. That's the plan, Jake said cheerfully. Over the next 4 hours, Jake worked with relentless efficiency. He used his basalt rock as hammer, wedge, lever, and measuring tool. He flattened metal pieces. He broke stones into specific sizes. He tested weight distribution. He calculated angles. Lisa and Amy helped as they could. Lisa's leg was better thanks to the nanobots, but she still couldn't do heavy work. Amy proved useful, her military training making her good at following instructions. Why that angle? Amy asked as Jake arranged support beams. 37 degrees, Jake explained. Strongest angle for this kind of structure. Ancient humans figured it out building pyramids. Pyramids? Amy looked confused. Big stone triangles, Jake said. Lasted thousands of years. Good engineering. They hauled materials up the ridge one load at a time. The climb was steep, and the wind fought them every step. But Jake kept moving, kept planning, kept building. At the top of the ridge, he laid out his design using smaller rocks as markers. Foundation here. Primary support here. Cross-bracing here. Transmitter mount at the top. That's a lot of work for one rock, Lisa observed. Jake grinned. Good thing I found more rocks up here. He had. The ridge was covered in loose stone. Jake selected pieces carefully, testing each one for weight and shape. Then he began assembling. The rock became his universal tool. He pounded support stakes into the ground. He shaped metal debris to fit together. He broke stones to create a stable foundation. He used the pointed end to scratch measurements into the metal. He used a flat end to test if surfaces were level. The survival kit has a laser level, Lisa pointed out. And it runs on batteries, Jake countered. My rock doesn't. By midday, the basic frame was taking shape. It wasn't pretty, but it was solid. Jake had created a tower that stood 7 meters high, built entirely from scavenged metal and carefully placed stones. I can't believe this is actually working, Amy said, staring up at the structure. Physics doesn't care if something looks pretty, Jake said. It cares if the math works. He climbed the tower to install the transmitter from the survival kit. The compact device would fit perfectly at the top. But as he was positioning it, dark clouds rolled in fast. Storm coming, Lisa shouted from below. Jake looked at the sky. She was right. The clouds were moving unnaturally fast, and lightning already flickered inside them. I need 10 more minutes. He called down. You don't have 10 minutes. Amy yelled. That storm will be here in 5. Jake worked faster. He used his rock to pound securing brackets into place. The wind was already picking up, making the tower sway. His hands were bleeding from gripping the rough metal, but he didn't stop. Lightning struck nearby. The boom made his ears ring. Morrison, get down from there. Lisa screamed. Almost done. Jake hammered the last bracket. The transmitter was secure, but the mounting platform was loose. One good gust would tear it apart. The storm hit like a wall. Wind slammed into Jake, nearly throwing him from the tower. Rain came down in sheets, cold and stinging. The metal under his hands became slippery. Jake. Amy was climbing up now, her security training overriding her common sense. We have to go. The platform's not secure. Jake shouted over the wind. If it fails, the whole tower is pointless. Lightning struck the ridge, close enough that Jake felt his hair stand up. The tower swayed violently. Jake looked at his rock, still gripped in his left hand. Then he looked at the loose platform. An idea formed. He wedged the pointed end of the rock into a gap between the platform and the support beam. Then he used another piece of metal as a hammer, pounding the rock deeper into the gap. The rock acted as a wedge, forcing the platform tight against the beam. "Hand me that cable," he yelled to Amy. She passed him a length of cable. Jake wrapped it around the rock and the beam, using the stone as an anchor point. He pulled the cable tight, his muscles screaming. Lightning hit the tower. The world went white. Thunder crashed. The metal structure conducted the electricity, but Jake and Amy were touching only the cable and the rock, not the metal directly. The charge passed through the tower and into the ground. When Jake's vision cleared, he was still holding the cable. The rock was hot but intact. The platform was secure. "That's it," he gasped. "It's done." He and Amy scrambled down the tower as another lightning bolt struck. They hit the ground running, sprinting for the shelter where Lisa waited. Behind them, the tower stood. The lightning had actually helped, welding some of the joints together with its heat. The transmitter at the top began to pulse, sending out their distress signal. They huddled in the shelter, soaked and shaking. The storm raged around them. "That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen," Lisa said. Jake was catching his breath. "Had to be done." "You could have died," Amy added. "But I didn't." Jake held up his rock. It was scorched black on one end from the lightning. Thanks to this. High above the planet, the Zentari ship recorded everything. Velcro watched the replay of the lightning strike 3 times. The human used the primitive tool as a lightning rod and anchor simultaneously, he said in wonder. The electrical resistance of the stone, combined with its position, channeled the energy safely. But how did he know? Another researcher asked. "I don't think he knew," Velcro said slowly. "I think he understood. There's a difference." "Explain." "Knowing is having data," Velcro said. "Understanding is seeing the principles behind the data." The human doesn't have scientific readings on basalt conductivity, but he understands that stone conducts differently than metal. That understanding let him improvise a solution. Fascinating. Indeed, Velcro agreed. Continue monitoring. The signal is broadcasting now. Someone will come. I want to see what the human does next. In the shelter, Jake, Lisa, and Amy waited for the storm to pass. The distress signal was out there now, calling for help. "We did it," Lisa said quietly. "We survived," Jake corrected. "Doing it means getting rescued." "How long until someone picks up the signal?" Amy asked. Jake looked at his scorched rock. "Could be hours. Could be days. So we keep surviving." The storm raged on, but inside their crude shelter, the fire burned warm. They would make it. One rock, one plan, one day at a time. The storm had passed by the 3rd morning, leaving the valley steaming in the purple-tinged sunlight. Jake was checking the transmitter through a pair of binoculars from the survival kit when Amy noticed the tracks. "Jake," she called, her voice tight. "Come look at this." He climbed down from his observation point and joined her. The tracks were massive, each one the size of a dinner plate, pressed deep into the muddy ground. They circled the camp in a wide arc. "Whatever made these is bigger than the thing from the first night," Amy said. Lisa joined them, moving better now on her healing leg. "Much bigger. Look at the depth. That's serious weight." Jake knelt and examined the tracks. 4-legged. Heavy build. Came from the north, circled us 3 times, then headed back north. "Why didn't it attack?" Lisa asked. Because it was scouting, Jake said grimly. Learning about us. It'll come back when it's ready. He stood and looked toward the ridge where his tower stood. The transmitter? It's putting out an electromagnetic pulse. That's what attracted it. So we turn it off? Amy suggested. No. Lisa said quickly. That signal is our only chance at rescue. Then we deal with the creature, Jake said. He walked to the survival kit and pulled out the weapons. Plasma rifle. Sonic disruptor. Energy blade. What do we have in firepower? Amy checked the weapons. Plasma rifle has 12 shots. Sonic disruptor has continuous beam for about 40 minutes. Energy blade is fully charged. Recommendations? Jake asked her. She was the security officer, after all. Plasma rifle for distance. Sonic disruptor if it gets close. Energy blade is last resort, Amy said. Standard anti-predator protocol. Jake studied the weapons, then set them aside. He picked up his rock instead. Oh, come on. Lisa exploded. You can't fight that thing with a rock. Not planning to fight it at all, Jake said calmly. He was studying the terrain, his eyes scanning the cliffs around their valley. Then what's your plan? Amy demanded. The creature is attracted to the electromagnetic pulse, right? Jake said. It probably uses electromagnetic sense to hunt. Lots of predators on high magnetic worlds do. So? Lisa asked. So the energy weapons will drive it crazy. Jake explained. Every shot will look like a challenge to its hunting territory. We might kill it, sure, but we might just make it more aggressive. And if we miss or just wound it, we're in serious trouble. Amy frowned. What's the alternative? Jake pointed to the northern cliff face. That overhang is unstable. See how it's cracked. The storm weakened it further. I bet my life that a good impact right there would bring down half the cliff. You want to start a rock slide? Lisa asked. Exactly. Jake grinned. Old school avalanche trap. Used by humans for thousands of years. That's insane, Lisa said. But she was studying the cliff now too. Actually, it's brilliant, Amy admitted. Energy weapons give a survival rate of maybe 20% against something that size. A rock slide is more like 60%. Where did you get those numbers? Lisa asked. Military Academy, Amy said. We studied primitive hunting tactics. Some of the old methods are surprisingly effective. Jake was already moving. Amy, help me gather rocks. Lisa, watch for the creature. If you see it coming, you give us a 5-minute warning. 5 minutes? Lisa looked skeptical. That's not much time. That's all we'll need, Jake said. Over the next hour, Jake and Amy positioned rocks along the base of the unstable cliff. Jake used his basalt stone to test the cliff face, tapping different spots and listening to the sound. Some places rang hollow. Others sounded solid. Here, he finally said, marking a spot with a white stone. This is the trigger point. The crack runs all the way up. One good impact here, and physics does the rest. He built a cairn of rocks at that exact spot, each stone carefully selected and placed. When the creature comes, we lead it here. I'll be the bait. Absolutely not. Amy protested. I'm security. I should be bait. You're security, which means you're better at precision throwing, Jake countered. You'll be up on that ledge with the trigger rock. When I give the signal, you drop it right here. He pointed at his can. What if I miss? Amy asked. Then we use the plasma rifle and pray, Jake said simply. Lisa was watching through the binoculars. Hate to interrupt your planning, but we have company. Big heat signature, coming from the north. How long? Jake asked. 4 minutes. Maybe less. Jake and Amy ran to their positions. Amy scrambled up to a ledge overlooking the cliff face, a large round rock already in her hands. Jake positioned himself in the open area before the cliff. The creature appeared at the ridgeline. It was massive, easily 4 meters tall and 8 meters long. 6 eyes glowed in its head. Its hide was thick and plated. It looked like something that could tear through steel. It saw Jake and roared. The sound echoed through the valley like thunder. Jake stood his ground, his small basalt rock in one hand. He must have looked like an insect to the creature. The beast charged. Jake waited. His heart hammered. Every instinct screamed at him to run. Not yet, he whispered to himself. The creature was 50 meters away. 40. 30. Jake could see the saliva dripping from its teeth. Could smell its rank breath. 20 meters. Now! Jake shouted. He sprinted toward the cliff, running at an angle that would take him past Amy's position. The creature followed, exactly as planned. Amy dropped her rock. It fell straight and true, hitting Jake's can dead center. The impact triggered the unstable section. Cracks spread like lightning across the cliff face. The creature was directly beneath the overhang when the cliff came down. Tons of rock and dirt poured down in a thunderous avalanche. The beast tried to turn, tried to escape, but momentum worked against it. The rock slide buried it in seconds. The rumble echoed through the valley. Dust filled the air. When it settled, there was only silence. Jake walked carefully to the edge of the debris pile. A single armored claw stuck out from under the rocks. It wasn't moving. Amy climbed down from her perch. That was too close. But it worked, Jake said. Lisa joined them, limping but mobile. I can't believe that actually worked. Why wouldn't it work? Jake asked. Gravity is the same everywhere. Mass times acceleration equals force. The cliff had mass. The fall gave an acceleration. The force did the rest. But the survival kit weapons, Lisa started, would have made it angry, Jake interrupted. This made it dead. Big difference. High above them, the Xanthari ship was in chaos. The researchers were arguing. The human rejected 12 plasma shots for a rock slide. One shouted. The combat algorithms gave plasma weapons a 23% survival rate, another said. The human's method showed 67%. But how did he know? Velcro was silent. He was reviewing data on human evolution. Finally, he spoke. They hunted megafauna on their homeworld. Creatures much larger than themselves. For hundreds of thousands of years, they survived by using the environment as a weapon. Fascinating. More than fascinating, Velcro said. Instructive. We've been measuring the human by our standards. But he's not playing our game. He's playing the oldest game in the universe. Survival of the smartest. Back at the camp, Jake sat by the fire. His rock was still in his hand, worn smooth on one edge now from constant use. We should probably move camp, Amy suggested. The noise might attract other predators. Or it might scare them away, Jake said. Show of force. Either way, we stay alert, Lisa said. They sat in silence for a while. The transmitter on the ridge pulsed steadily, calling for rescue. Jake, Lisa said finally, when we get rescued, you need to teach this stuff. What you know. Why? Jake asked. Because you just survived 3 days on a hostile world using a rock. Lisa said, that's something everyone should learn. Jake smiled. My grandfather would say, I just did what humans do. What's that? Amy asked. Adapt, Jake said. That's our real superpower. Not technology. Adaptation. The transmitter kept pulsing. Somewhere out there, someone was listening. Help was coming. The rescue ship arrived on the 4th day. dropping through the purple atmosphere like a silver needle. Jake, Lisa, and Amy watched from their camp as the Coalition vessel landed in the valley, its engines kicking up clouds of dust. Finally, Lisa breathed. The ship's hatch opened, and a squad of rescue personnel rushed out. They wore full environmental suits and carried medical scanners. Leading them was a tall figure in a command uniform. "Commander Lisa Grant?" The leader called out, his voice filtered through his helmet. "Here," Lisa waved. "We have 1 KIA and 3 survivors." The medics rushed to them immediately, scanning and treating. Within minutes, they had Lisa and Amy on stretchers, though both protested they could walk. The commanding officer removed his helmet, revealing features that marked him as Vryn, one of the Coalition's founding species. His skin had the characteristic blue tint, and his eyes were large and golden. "I'm Commander Hayes," he said, his voice carrying a slight musical quality. "We received your distress signal. What happened to your ship?" "Navigation failure, followed by uncontrolled descent," Jake explained. "The ship's mostly scrap now." Hayes looked around the camp, taking in the crude shelter, the fire pit, the scattered debris. His expression grew more puzzled with each second. "You survived 4 days with this?" 4 days and 3 nights, Jake corrected. Hayes walked to the survival kit, still sitting where Jake had left it. He checked its contents. "You barely used anything. The food synthesizer is untouched. The portable shelter is still packed. The weapons haven't been fired." "Didn't need them," Jake said simply. "Didn't need them?" Hayes stared at him. "That kit represents 500 years of galactic survival science. Every item is optimized for maximum efficiency." Jake held up his rock, still in his hand after 4 days. "This represents 2 million years of human survival science. Every technique proven by actual survival." Hayes looked at the rock, then at Jake, then at the rock again. "You survived a hostile planet with a rock?" "And a plan," Jake added. One of the rescue crew was examining the signal tower. "Commander, you need to see this." Hayes and Jake climbed to the ridge. The tower stood there, scorched but functional, still broadcasting its signal. "This is incredible," the crewman said. "It's built entirely from salvage. No molecular bonding. No power tools. Just mechanical fasteners and gravity." Hayes studied the tower. "This shouldn't work. The stress calculations alone work fine if you know the math," Jake interrupted. "Ancient humans built structures that lasted thousands of years without computers. But why?" Hayes seemed genuinely confused. "The kit had a molecular bonder, which didn't have enough bonding gel after the crash," Jake explained. "Check your own salvage reports. You'll see." Hayes did. His face showed surprise. "You're right. But you could have requested different supplies in your distress call. And waited how long for delivery?" Jake asked. "Meanwhile, the planet kills us?" "No thanks. I worked with what I had." They returned to the camp. The medics had stabilized Lisa and Amy and were loading them onto the ship. Lisa called out to Jake. "Tell him about the Predator." "Predator?" Hayes asked. Jake led him to the rock slide. The massive claw still stuck out from the debris. Hayes' eyes went wide. "That's a Kranth," he exclaimed. "They're apex predators. Extremely dangerous. Highly territorial." "Was dangerous," Jake corrected. "Now it's dead." "You killed it with the energy weapons?" "Killed it with rocks." Jake pointed to the cliff. "Simple avalanche trap." Hayes was scanning the area with his handheld device. "Your survival probability against a Kranth with standard kit weapons is 23%. How did you know the rock slide would work?" "Common sense," Jake said. "The energy weapons would attract it more. The electromagnetic pulse would make it aggressive. Better to use the environment." But the calculations didn't need calculations, Jake interrupted. Just needed to understand that big rocks falling on things kill them. Humans have known that for a very long time. A commotion near the rescue ship drew their attention. A smaller vessel was descending, one that neither Jake nor Hayes recognized. "Unknown ship," one of the rescue crew called out. "They're hailing us." The vessel landed, sleek and silver. Its design was clearly advanced, far beyond standard coalition technology. The hatch opened and 3 figures emerged. They were tall, thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Their heads were elongated, and their eyes were multifaceted like gems. "Zenthari," Hayes breathed. "But they never make contact." The lead Zenthari approached, a translation device attached to his throat. "I am Velcro, research specialist. I request permission to speak with the human called Jake Morrison." "Why?" Hayes asked suspiciously. The Zenthari were known for their reclusiveness. "We have been observing," Velcro said. "We witnessed the crash, the survival, everything. We must understand." Jake stepped forward. "Understand what?" Velcro's ass fixed on Jake with unnerving intensity. "Why you rejected optimal technology for primitive methods?" "They weren't primitive," Jake said. "They were fundamental." "Explain." Jake held up his rock. "Every tool in that survival kit started somewhere. Someone, millions of years ago, picked up a rock and figured out it could do things. Break things. Build things. Defend things. That knowledge got passed down, generation after generation. We improved it, refined it, built on it. But we never forgot it. But advanced technology is superior." Velcro insisted. "Is it?" Jake challenged. "Superior at what?" "Your plasma rifle needs power. My rock doesn't. Your molecular bonder needs specific materials. My rock works with anything. Your fancy tools fail when conditions aren't perfect. My rock works anywhere." Velcro was silent for a long moment. "We assumed your choices indicated cognitive regression under stress." "You assumed wrong," Jake said. "I made calculated decisions based on reliability, sustainability, and adaptability. That's not regression. That's intelligence." Velcro turned to his companions. They communicated in rapid clicks and whistles. Finally, he faced Jake again. "We wish to study your methods. Will you consent to teaching?" "Teaching what?" Jake asked. "How to think like a human," Velcro said simply. "How to recognize when simplicity provides greater efficiency than complexity." Hayes was listening with growing amazement. "The Zenthari want to learn from us?" "Not from coalition humans," Velcro corrected. "From this human. He understands principles we have forgotten in our pursuit of technological advancement." Jake looked at his rock, worn smooth from 4 days of constant use. "I'm just a geological surveyor." "I look at rocks for a living." "Exactly," Velcro said. "You understand the fundamental nature of materials. You see rocks not as obstacles but as tools, as resources, as solutions. This perspective is valuable." Lisa called from the ship's hatch. "Jake, they want to know if you'll work for the Coalition Survival Training Program." "Doing what?" Jake shouted back. "Teaching advanced species how to survive with basic tools." Hayes said. "Apparently, there's a gap in our training. We focus so much on technology that we forget the fundamentals." Jake looked around at the camp he'd built with his rock. The shelter that had protected them. The tower that had saved them. The rock slide that had defended them. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "While you think, we need to get you examined," Hayes said. "Standard post-rescue medical protocol." As they walked to the ship, Velcro fell into step beside Jake. "What will you do with the rock?" Jake looked at the stone he'd carried for 4 days. It was scorched, chipped, worn. It had been hammer, wedge, weapon, anchor. It had saved his life a dozen times over. "Keep it," Jake said. Reminder that the best technology is the one that works when everything else fails. "May I record that statement for our research?" Velcro asked. "Sure," Jake agreed. "But add this. The most advanced civilizations use technology. The smartest ones never forget where technology came from." They boarded the rescue ship. As it lifted off, Jake took one last look at the planet that had tried to kill him. The tower still stood on the ridge, broadcasting into empty space. Lisa sat beside him. "What are you thinking?" Jake smiled. "Thinking I need to write a manual." Chapter 1. Find a Rock. Amy laughed from her medical bed. Chapter 2. Figure out what to do with it. Hayes approached them. "The Coalition is serious about that training position. You travel to different worlds, teaching survival fundamentals to various species." "Sounds interesting," Jake admitted. "Think about it during your medical recovery," Hayes suggested. "We'll talk more when we reach the station." Jake settled into his seat, his rock still in his hand. Through the viewport, he could see the Zenthari ship following them. "What do you think they really want?" Lisa asked quietly. "I think they want to remember something they forgot," Jake said. "How to be basic. How to be simple. How to survive when all your fancy tools don't work." "And you can teach them that?" Jake looked at his rock. "My grandfather taught me. I can teach them. Anyone can learn. You just have to remember one thing." "What's that?" Amy asked. Jake smiled. "A human with a rock and a plan is eternal." The ship jumped to FTL, leaving the hostile planet behind. But the lesson Jake taught would spread across the galaxy. Sometimes the simplest answer is the best answer. Sometimes a rock is enough. Sometimes being human means remembering what your ancestors knew. And sometimes survival isn't about having the best tools. It's about knowing how to use what you have.